Hello everybody, welcome to MJX Movies. Today I'll be acting the 2023 film Napoleon, directed by Ridley Scott. In this movie, we open in the midst of the French Revolution with the guillotining of Marie Antoinette. We then smash cut to a young Napoleon who is in the process of planning for and then eventually successfully leading an attack on the fortification of Toulon. Afterwards, we're introduced to Josephine, his future first wife. Because she's an aristocrat, she's in prison during the Reign of Terror. And while in prison, she's informed that the best way, the only way perhaps, to survive is by offering herself up to the men of the prison so that she might become pregnant and survive during the term of the pregnancy, because pregnancies are allowed to be carried to term, thus sparing the lives of the females from the guillotine. All of this is happening while Napoleon is winning more battles and consolidating power. Eventually, Maximilien Robespierre is deposed, and the French government is once again turned over. Because of this, Josephine is released from prison, and her and Napoleon eventually meet in society. It turns out Josephine's a bit of a gambler. They fall in love, and then eventually marry. And this is once again while Napoleon is consolidating power and winning battles. After they marry, Napoleon goes on a military campaign where he conquers Italy and then eventually winds up in Egypt. While in Egypt, he discovers that Josephine is being unfaithful, and so Napoleon abandons his army to return to France, which causes him great political consternation. However, through maneuvering, he comes out on top. And then ultimately, he decides, you know what? I can do this by myself. So he maneuvers himself into the position of becoming not just the first consul of France, but eventually the emperor of France, the leader of France. He does so controversially by taking the crown from the Pope and placing it on his own head himself, thus showing his many things about him, including his lust for power and also his belief in himself. He attempts to engage Austria in treaty. However, Austria rebuffs this, which leads him to fight the Austrian forces at the famed Battle of Austerlitz, where he handily defeats them. Afterwards, he has a meeting with the Austrian leader. However, the leader of Russia does not show. He tells the Austrian leader that he spared his army, their armies, as a gesture of kindness, and this will haunt Napoleon later on. Moving forward, Josephine and Napoleon are unable to conceive a child, which is of great problems for Napoleon, who wants to produce an heir to the throne. It is eventually discovered that it is not Napoleon who's infertile, but it is in fact Josephine, leading to their divorce. Napoleon would go on to marry Mary Louise of Austria, and she would bear him a son, bear him an heir. So then, moving on as well, Napoleon decides to invade Russia after the Russian leadership reneges, Alexander, the leader of Russia, reneges on the Treaty of Tislit. This is a great folly for Napoleon. He enters Russia with a huge army. However, he leaves with only a few. He does successfully capture Moscow, but again, this costs him the lives of the majority of his forces. Upon returning to France, French leadership exiles Napoleon to the island of Elba, which is just off the coast of Tuscany. Josephine takes up with Alexander, the leader of Russia, and then becomes ill, causing Napoleon to return to the mainland. He doesn't arrive in time to see Josephine before she perishes. However, he does reclaim his army and regains leadership of France, which causes him to engage in battle with British forces and as well Prussian forces at the famed Battle of Waterloo, which Napoleon loses and his forces are crushed. This leads Napoleon to once again be exiled, however, this time for good, on the island of Saint Helen, in the Atlantic Ocean this time, nowhere near mainland Europe. And then Napoleon passes on into history, and the movie closes. So, this movie stars Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon, Vanessa Kirby as Josephine, and then a lot of other character actors you may not recognize. I recognized one from the HBO film Conspiracy. I'm going to start by saying that I watched the director's cut, which apparently is 45 minutes longer than the theatrical cut, so it fleshes out a lot more of the film. Napoleon, of course, a famed historical figure, And depending on what you want out of this movie will greatly determine how much you do or not enjoy this movie. So no, there's a lot that happened in Napoleon's life. A lot of things happened in a lot of places. This movie's primarily focused on his relationship with Josephine and then a couple of battles. So if you want to learn more about how he reshaped society, Napoleonic laws, etc., this movie's not going to touch on any of that. This movie is primarily concerned with the courtship, marriage, and lack of child between him and Josephine. And then really there's a couple battle sequences, but it's not really the totality of Napoleon's battles. Also, given that this is a Ridley Scott movie, there are a lot of liberties taken with the depictions of historical things. So for instance, the Battle of Austerlitz, I would say is not a historically accurate depiction. It's an imagining of the Battle of Austerlitz. For instance, from what I understand, the lake portion of the Battle of Austerlitz is perhaps thought to not have happened or is fictionalized. Something that really worked for this movie, the production design is fantastic. The costumes are all 10 out of 10s. The set design is also, I would say, very well done. However, there was one staircase that I think got used as 4 or 5 different staircase locations, so eagle-eyed viewers might be able to spot that. One thing that didn't work in terms of production design, I watched this on HD ultra high def television. So Vanessa Kirby's fake eyelashes, which are anachronistic for the time, really stood out. But other than that, yeah, production design was great. The performance by Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon is very muted, which is kind of contrary to what one might expect from both Joaquin Phoenix and also a big historical figure like Napoleon. I think one would expect that, a character like Napoleon would be very grandiose, but throughout the majority of this movie, he's very quiet for the most part. Another thing I think this movie does really well is it highlights the fact that many people, after they achieve great success when they're young, get high in their own supply. As one might say, as the expression goes. And by that I mean to say that after one achieves great success when they're young, if they're surrounded by people who put them on a pedestal of sorts, they start to believe their own mythology and start to believe that rather than being somebody who, although smart, was also benefited from good timing and good luck, they are in fact somebody who is just that much better than the rest of humanity, which seemingly is what this movie wants to depict Napoleon as getting to the point of. Where at the end of the movie, he's talking as though, he's still in command of Europe, and yet he's on a boat with a bunch of kids listening to him. So, yeah. Overall, between yay and in between, I would say if you like historical, semi-real movies, this one's probably a slight yay. I would also say go with the theatrical cut over the director's cut because it gives a little bit more time to breathe on a lot of the scenes. And from what I understand, the theatrical cut kind of raced through a lot of stuff. However, if you're somebody who appreciates historical accuracy or would like to see a more total picture of the life of Napoleon, this one's going to be an A. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Like and subscribe. Cheers.